Rajat Sethi, and is that the reason why that at least in the last 2 days, what we've heard, the Prime Minister and your top leadership opening rallies with not is bar 400 par, but is bar Modi Sarkar. There's been maybe a rethink on that, is it? That, you know, maybe you bit off too much by suggesting 400, you've made your cadre and your voters complacent?
Well, one thing, Preeti ji, is sure that us analysts think and are wired in a different way, and politicians are wired, and that to Prime Minister Modi is wired in a totally different way. First of all, what I feel, what I sort of understand from first phase is that, yes, BJP would have thought, I mean, see, ideally when you are in a war, you do not plan for the best case scenario. You plan for an absolute worst case scenario. Best case can always happen, which is good for everybody, for the incumbent, etc. But when you're planning for the worst case, you would want to identify what genuine issues would have gone wrong in terms of having a lower voter turnout. And this is where I think Prime Minister Modi was never satisfied, with a benchmark. He keeps pushing the envelope forward. He would have thought that, is it that the middle class voters haven't gone out because of the heat wave, or is it that, my cadre is not enthused enough that he is not able to draw out people for the voting? He would be, looking at those factors, even if it might not be true. He would still be, prepping himself, prepping for the election, and constantly changing his game plan, his strategy, as we speak throughout the election in a live way. Contrary to this, I don't think opposition is so nimble or is so agile when it comes to changing scenarios. This is where the key difference is. What Prime Minister would have thought is, yes, the temperatures seem a little low. We have seen 2 consecutive very high octane events, the local elections in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan. BJP went all out, and it was a very, very big electoral affair because that was considered as a semi-final. And then you had the Ram Temple issue, again a very high octane event. When these 2 high octane events were there, the first phase relatively seemed a little dull. And I think this is where Prime Minister would have picked up that it requires greater political rhetoric, it requires going ballistic against the opposition. And people at the end of the day want to see a gladiator fight. And if they see the gladiator fight, they cheer more. And the more they cheer, the more they turn up at the election booths. And it is good for everybody. If a voter is getting a chance to come out and pick their representative, it is good for the opposition and good for the incumbent. But here the incumbent is smart in a way that they are planning out the worst case scenario and trying to course correct and trying to see that, the voter is at least enthused among the choice that is available, however stark that choice.
Sanjay ji, you at least stuck your head out and said that it, at least for now, even if you go by the first phase, it doesn't seem like a wave election. And of course, we'll know because there are 6 phases pending, and you can, correct yourself later on if you think otherwise. But as a psephologist, if you are to look at the first phase, what are the top readings that you have come up with?
Top reading, my own sense is that what Rahul has mentioned, that if the voters also look at the nature of competition, you mentioned about very low turnout in Bihar. I think general perception is that BJP is having a very strong alliance in its favor, and so voters of the NDA as well as the UPA, NDA voters may have got complacent because they think our group or the party which they are likely to vote for is very strong, or the NDA which they are likely to vote for is very strong. So why to stand in the queue in such a hot weather? And maybe the voters who intended to vote for the India alliance, they may have thought maybe that it's very difficult to defeat the formidable NDA alliance in Bihar, as it looks like, going by the alliance pattern. So that may have, so the nature of political competition may have brought down the turnout in Bihar. And if you look at Bengal, which you are mentioning, that a 10% increase, and we all know that how keenly people are watching the West Bengal election and how keenly is West Bengal election contested. So some relationship you can draw that the nature of competition may also be guiding the voters' enthusiasm and their participation on the voting day. So that's also some relationship we find. That's the kind of analysis I could do based on the turnout in different states.
Rahul Verma, let's bring in a few other states in all of this. Uttarakhand, one of the lowest states in terms of turnout. And you bring in a state like Rajasthan. Many political analysts today say Rajasthan could be the wild card, at least in the first two phases. And it could go either way. But, even there's been a significant drop in voting percentage.
True. As I said, Preeti, like one thing which I learned with every election, that once the voting starts or comes very, very close to voting day, elections somehow in all kinds of conversations become very, very uncertain. Like if you were talking a month from 15 days, 20 days back, all polls were predicting that BJP has a massive advantage, would be sort of like crossing its previous mark. So elections at that point seem a little bit more certain. And this largely happens because during the election phase, we don't have the kind of data, polling data and everything that comes out, which was available 15, 20 days back. So to me, it's all the conversation which makes election much more uncertain rather than the actual ground situation. Because elections hardly at this level can be changed in last 10 days, 15 days. Much like exam, if you only study on the last day, you can very well pass the exam, but you are not going to get, distinction. So the more uncertainty which is being created on Twitter and all kinds of conversation which we are having is actually not the situation. So you'll see all that analysis coming up. Regarding your point C, why in some states the fluctuation would be around the turnout would be higher is also given the base. See, a Tamil Nadu or a West Bengal on an average turns out around 80%, whereas a UP and Bihar turns out around a 60%. So the kind of fluctuations that you can see in these two states because of the base is going to be very, very different.